Hello, and welcome to CAIC's online discussion series, Heard Over the Piano. My name is Nicholas PHAN, and I am the Artistic Director of Collaborative Arts Institute of Chicago. And I'm really excited about this conversation today, which is previewing our Summer Leader Lounge, which is happening on May 15th, 2022 at Epiphany Center for the Arts. Today's guest artists on this conversation are guest artists for that Leader Lounge, mezzo-soprano Clara Osowski and pianist Tyler Wottrich. I'm really excited to have these guys here for this recital. They've been winning prizes together all over the world at major song competitions like the Wigmore Hall Song Competition and Thomas Kvastof's International Das Lied competition in Heidelberg, just to name a couple. Clara and Tyler, if you'll join me, we can chat.
Hi.
Hi. So first of all, tell me where you guys are dialing in from.
I'm dialing in from my condo in Minneapolis, so I am actually home this week, thankfully.
Welcome to my office in Fargo, North Dakota. Those of you who've never been to Fargo before, now you have been virtually.
The magic of the internet.
It's true.
So this is a chance for our audiences to get to know you guys. Let's just start pretty basically. How did you get into music? Maybe Clara, would you mind going first?
Sure. Yeah. I have spent a lot of time in Tyler's office before Tyler was even there, because I went to school at North Dakota State University, where he's now a professor. So we just met because I came back to do an alumni thing and they had just hired him. But actually, my story about music starts in North Dakota, where I was born and raised on a farm. And I actually had a big upbringing in the Lutheran church. So I started singing right away next to my mother, mostly hymns, and just trying to match my mom's voice. But she was a saxophonist. So of course, saxophone was my first love. But about when you get to be a terrible teenager, I was really sick and tired of putting my instrument together and taking it apart and putting it together and taking it apart. So naturally I was like, well, I'm pretty okay at singing too. It's a little easier. So I gravitated more towards the voice. And my private voice teacher in high school said, why don't you, when you go to study at NDSU for microbiology, like I had planned, he was like, why don't you consider a minor in music? And I was like, well, I'll do one better and I'll do a double major. And then eventually microbiology went away. But that's how I got started in music. It was really just a love of singing at state school, singing in choirs, madrigal dinners. Opera came later, but it was just, I really liked to make noise and including words. So saxophone was great. And I still enjoy a lot of listening to jazz and things like that. But I choose to communicate with words now. So that's it.
That sounds so eminently mature of you. I choose to communicate with words. So when I was 8, I just out of the blue started begging my parents for piano lessons. We had an upright piano. I heard my mom playing Love is Blue. I remember that particular song was one I just thought that was like so awesome. And I needed to study piano right now. And so I begged them for lessons. It took a few months actually, because they weren't sure I was serious. But I was like super serious. And so I got started with that. Ended up doing a lot of accompanying right away, although it took me quite a while to get in playing with singers. Now I've worked with Clara a lot. I'm married to a singer. But the way I got into it is actually kind of a little bit funny, because I did Music Academy of the West about 10 or 11 years ago. And I heard that this was this really cool thing. I was thinking, oh, I should do more with singers. This is seeming kind of cool. I haven't done a lot of that in the past. And so, I got accepted, blah, blah, blah. They sent me all these kind of emails leading up to the summer, like, oh, we're going to do Barbara of Seville. Okay, that sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. And, and by the way, here's the score we're going to use. I'm like, that's interesting. Oh, cool. Now I know that they're going to use recording. Fine. Okay, so the blah, blah, blah. I had no idea what I was walking to. Okay, so I show up the first day, they have all the collaborative pianists come a week early. And so I'm sitting in a room with Warren Jones and John Churchwell, and I'm just showing up in my shorts and I'm like this, ready to go, and Warren's like, okay, who's gonna play, first recit after the overture, who's gonna play, who's gonna sing? I didn't even have a score, and I was like, ooh. So 9 weeks later, I knew a lot more about the kind of things that I didn't know about vocal work, and fortunately managed to love it after I saved myself from this obvious disaster. They eventually actually let me play the secco recits for Barbara Seville, which was super fun. But that's my not so smooth entry into the vocal piano world, but
We've made up for it. You're good. You're good.
I was gonna say, it sounds like you've more than made up for it.
Well, Warren and I are somehow still friends. He actually came here about a month ago, did a great residency for our students.
So tell us, how did you guys met? You met at an alumni situation, or?
Yeah, my voice professor at NDSU, after I did my grad work at University of Iowa, and then I moved up to the Twin Cities. So I stayed very firmly in the Midwest. And he had invited me back to do Dominic Argento's A Few Words About Chekhov. And the piano faculty I had known when I went to school there, and who I had to take theory levels 3 and 4 from, had retired, and I loved him dearly, but I was like, I don't who are they going to have up here to play this incredibly difficult score, because it's Argento and it's very difficult. And I was like, there's a lot of stuff that's with the voice, and I was like, I don't know who this is going to be. And then the first rehearsal, Tyler walked in, and I was like, well, this guy's 5 years younger than me. No, I don't know how much younger he was than me, but I was like, this guy looks 20 years younger than me. And I was like, what is going on? And it was just, I couldn't believe the music that came out of Tyler's piano. So it was one of those things where it's like, hey, do you want to collaborate some more? And it seemed to be a good fit. And now we just have a really good time. So I'm very grateful to NDSU for hiring Tyler. I think that has really elevated my career a long ways, just to get to work with him.
I did not imagine that a great mezzo-soprano would come with the job either, but it's turned out to be one of the best things about coming here for me as well. So
we lucked out.
You guys met, it was instantaneous musical chemistry, and so then you just decided to do these song competitions? Like,
yeah. The song competition things were a way for me to it being in Minnesota, there was a work, church jobs at the time, and being in choruses that would meet once a week. And then I built a teaching schedule around that. So there wasn't a lot of free time to do a lot of traveling, but I knew if I could spend a week in Europe, I have that week blocked off, and I could prepare a lot on my own. And going up to see Tyler every once in a while, we could prepare together these 30 different lieder that we need to have memorized for this competition. And so it was kind of like this is something I can do in my free time as a hobby. And Tyler was really gung-ho for it, and I'm really excited. Like we both were coming from, I think, song and lieder from different, like Tyler, you were kind of fresh with it, but I've always not fresh, but like per your story that you just described with vocal music. But we both are really detail-oriented people, and we both can see the music and try and get at the core of what the composer wanted. And I've learned so much from Tyler. He's very subtle in telling me. My favorite thing that Tyler says is, I don't think that note is quite true. And that means it's like not in the center of the pitch. But when he said that, I was like, okay, yeah, I can get behind that. It's great. So yeah, we just did some song competitions, and the way we work apart, and then we come together briefly, and we bring our own ideas, and it's efficient and very clear.
We also met and worked with a lot of, one of the great things that I appreciated about doing those was that it incidentally ran Clara and I into a lot of people in the song vocal world that were just really great, not just to work with, but to stay connected with. People like Francois Leroux, people like Richard Stokes, people like Julia Strake, all these great people that we got to encounter, going these different places, competing. And that's, in a way feels even richer to me than the actual competition, prizes, etc.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was great. So, I think, Felicity Lott, I think at one point said to us, "Oh, are you the ones from the Dakotas?" And that's when I knew. I was like, for Felicity Lott to say the word Dakota, I was like, this is what it's about.
So is this, I mean, for people who don't, our audience who like have not done song competitions, and actually I didn't do any of the song competition. The only song competition I did was the Cardiff Singer of the World, like the song aspect of it, which not what you guys did. That's like a sideshow. So, is it like The Voice? Like you go and you get to like work with these people who are judging you, or like do you just kind of go and like do your rounds and then pray that you get the prize? I mean, how does it?
Yeah, it's the second one. Like for Das Lied, we prepared 30 different lieder, and they were prepared and memorized, because at any point, I think, what was it, the first round, we got to select, when we got there and we got the rules, we got to select 3 on our own. Like that was a gift, because none of them were selected by the judges. So the first 3 we could select on our own, so we could feel really confident about what program order we were doing them in, and what we were showing. The second round, I think it was, we selected 2 and they selected 3. And so there, it's like, okay, well, here we go. That's why you have to have all of it memorized, because you just don't know what they're going to select. And then you order them yourself. And then I think the final round, they were very generous, and I think we got to pick out of the rest of them, but there are no repeats allowed. So you're doing, only not even half of the songs you prepared, really. But that's how it is. That's how it is. And it's great. Like, you get to know these songs really well. And then at these competitions, if you have the courage, you can sit and hear this incredible music being sung by all the competitors. And that's where I think that was extremely valuable too, is just to hear the everyone that beat me. We're really, and a lot of people who did it were so inspiring. It's incredible to sit there, and every singer has something so unique and authentic when they're singing. I think that year we had to choose, was it 20 Schubert, 5 Schumann, and 5 Wolfgang Riem, I think is, So I had never even heard of Riem, and it was hard to get scores in America, but we made it happen. So yeah, that's kind of what those competitions are like. It's almost, go ahead, Tyler, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, to get at your question, Nick, I mean, it is kind of the standard that you go somewhere, you compete, and you hope for a prize. They did, the Kvastov, the Das Lied competition, they did offer the chance to meet with the judges afterward and to actually hear their feedback, which is something the Wigmore competition definitely did as well, which is extremely valuable. Otherwise, it's just kind of a black box. Someone got the prize and you don't necessarily know why and why you didn't, which things you did were successful or not. So they did offer these extremely valuable opportunities to really get that valuable feedback, having sit down sessions with these, extremely excellent people who are on these juries. And Felicity Lott, I think, did this kind of marathon public masterclass at Wigmore for people who didn't pass the semis, that kind of thing. And Graham Johnson gave a great talk on Britain songs that shockingly few people attended. I mean, for me, that was worth the price of admission for the entire competition, hearing him talk and demonstrate about these Britain songs. It was phenomenal. So, I mean, there's these great things that, were also involved. It wasn't just, compete and hope. There were these additional value things.
And as a native English speaker, and not I've been to Europe several times, but being able to be in front of an audience and sing the repertoire that I love, some Schubert and other German lieder, and to not have the audience look down at a translation was just incredible. And it was an immediate reminder of why communication is so important. So it was really a great experience for us.
Is it different? I mean, aside from the language directness, I mean, did you feel a difference performing that repertoire over there versus over here?
Yes, actually, because it was in Heidelberg, and Schumann was just down the street at a bar, a few hundred years ago. So there is that. Everyone has that sense of, we walked where they walked, and there's a little bit of a difference, a little bit more reverence, but no less enthusiasm, I don't think, than even our audiences here. So, but there's a sense of, it's time to eat our vegetables. Like it doesn't feel like vegetables over there. You know what I mean?
No, they really owned that music. It felt like, that was, that was their music. There was that kind of, natural, it's not like, audiences here are unenthusiastic,
Right.
but they really kind of owned it in a way that you could feel in the room, even without then talking to them after the concert. You could feel that in their type of reactions. It was kind of cool.
So tell us about this program, which is probably also about 30 songs. So
Yeah. 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 It's a hefty program. The whole program has a few different components to it, but everything has either been text by a woman, the text is by a woman, or the composition has been heavily influenced by a woman. In the case of Brahms, that's that Opus 86. Both Clara Schumann and Elisabeth von Herzogenberg were extremely involved in that writing. And there's a lot of Clara themes in there. And there's a lot of like, angsty Brahms poetry towards women. So it's, so it's very heavily influenced by that. But the Schubert, I I really enjoy singing some of these Schubert songs that are so central to his work that people know. Maybe the one that they don't is On Emma, but I think it's a little gorgeous like extended recitative, which isn't you don't always find in Schubert lieder. So it's that weird outlier. And the Hafter follows Die junge Nonne because the Hafter was written by a nun. So these are all these subtleties that no one will probably ever understand. Tyler always tells me to just knock it off, but
No, they're great. I mean, the thing is, like, once you see them, it's like, wow, it's like little things here and here and here, and the whole through line. You should really, like, give like a pre-concert talk or something,
yeah, someday I'll do that. There are
even a
these little
5-minute
nooks and
one, just to
crannies.
say, hey, all these
Yeah,
things, because that's cool.
and
And those Hafter texts, I mean, coming from a nun, are really kind of striking. So I mean,
exactly.
those are cool connections.
Yeah,
No.
yeah,
so
and the
tell us a little bit about Hafter. I mean, who is he? And
yeah,
I mean, our
he was a
audience is definitely not familiar with Hafter. So, but
yeah. I was told about these songs by one of my really good friends, Dr. Juan Carlos Mendoza. He did his dissertation on Mexican song cycles during the Revolution, and Halfter actually left. His mother was Spanish, and his father was German, and he left Spain and went to Mexico City. Probably sometimes in the 30s, maybe. It was during that whole time where Mexico welcomed a lot of Spanish people for whatever reason. But Halfter was very influential in the composition process of the identity of Mexican music. So he had a lot of students, and I believe it wasn't. I'm confusing him with Revueltas, but Revueltas was more into serialism, where Halfter still was composing with that these two songs specifically, a neo-Baroque type of sound, because the text is from the 1600s of Sor Juana de la Cruz, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, and she Spanish nun, or she was a Mexican nun in the court of the Spanish court in Mexico City. And these are not your typical nun texts, of course. I mean, they probably are secretively, but yeah, that he influenced Mexico a lot in composition, and I never would have known these had it not been for my friend Juan Carlos.
she was not your typical nun in general, I think. I mean, there's a whole
Mhm.
Netflix series about her. By the way, everybody,
Is there?
yeah, there
Oh
is.
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a whole
Okay.
Netflix, like it's dramatized. It's like
Oh
Bridgerton
boy.
with nuns.
Oh, okay, great,
Yeah.
great. Well, I figured, yeah, after Die junge Nonne, that is the appropriate place, and it's also just knowing that we don't, the audience does need some of those breaks and needs a little bit of levity when you have both Schubert and Brahms on the program.
They have their senses of humor, but it's
They do, but yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, then otherwise the list and the Brahms actually have a closer relationship. Because Tyler and I we're going to plan on recording with a historical piano that the Schubert Club owns here in St. Paul. That it was built around 1878 and was actually owned by Franz Liszt. So Those two we wanted to pair and try them out on modern piano and see what we're going to learn by using historical piano as well. And Jeanne d'Arc is I've learned a lot about that 19-year-old, and it's an incredible story, and it's a very polarizing piece. Some people really like the list, some people really don't. So I'm excited to try it out in front of an audience to see what the reaction is. It's only 8 minutes, but it's a serious 8 minutes.
I don't know why people wouldn't like it. I mean, what a great figure. I mean, and Liszt really is a master of capturing drama, all the feels of going up on the pyre, I'm
Yep.
gonna go up and get burned,
And
but I
Liszt,
say France,
yeah, and Liszt actually revised it 3 different times. So he really did enjoy this piece. And it was all throughout his career he revised it. So that strong figure then led into the intermission, because I think people need a break after that.
Who doesn't need an intermission after being burnt at the stake?
I think so. Give a little bit of a pause. But then the second half is our all newer modern music, but with close connections. Dominic Argento was a good friend of mine. He made the strongest gin and tonics, and his house was an homage to leader singers like Peter Pears signed his wall, because they had shared a lot of dinners together when he would be over in Minneapolis. Janet Baker, he wrote for Janet Baker, and it's just Dominic was a treasure in our community, and Casaguidi specifically doesn't get done a lot because it's so hard. Like, it is, not only is it orchestrated, Dominic did a piano reduction for Martin Katz, actually. And I think Martin told me this. Martin, when he received the reduction, he threw it against the wall because it was so hard. But if you have Tyler Wottrich playing for you, nothing is hard.
it's not that hard. I mean, this is not one of these foolish orchestral reductions where it's like good luck. I mean, here is an extremely intelligently done reduction where he's thought about every single. It's quite clear if you look at it from a pianist perspective. It's challenging, but it's not pushing the limits. And it's doing its best to capture really the sounds of the orchestra, which is really quite challenging to do. So I have enormous respect for that reduction, but it is tricky. It's tricky.
You guys want to tell
itself,
a little bit about what it's about?
Yeah, the piece itself is text that Dominic assembled on Elizabeth Barrett Browning and her writings to her sister in letters, and I feel it's a very very strong homage to his wife Carolyn. He lost his wife in 2006, and it was a big hole in his life, and that was really known in the community. And so these texts, while he wrote it a long time ago, he wrote it in the 80s, and it premiered in the 80s with Flicka. But these texts are very centered around just everyday life at Casaguidi. And Dominic and Carolyn every summer would spend in Florence. Dominic became fluent in Italian, as was Carolyn. Carolyn was a soprano, and their place in Florence was across the street from Casaguidi. So this is somewhere where they frequented. It's the same thing as they walked where Robert and Elizabeth had walked. And I think there are similar themes in their lives, but it just talks about, their house. The first movement talks about their house. The second movement talks about the issues between their cook and their maid and what that ensues there. The third movement is about her love for Robert. She really talks about how that relationship developed and how then her father was always skeptical. Her family was skeptical. The fourth movement is about the death of her father and what that did to her. Every movement, and the fifth is about domesticity, just about their daily life and what happens when the little one comes along. But every movement has the word true or truth in it somewhere. And that's something that, after doing it, I think 6 times, I've done it 6 times. I finally figured it out 5th time, like that exists. And I really think there's a through line there. And he never explicitly said that there's something in there, but it's really, there's a lot of truth in that for Dominic and his love for Carolyn. So it's a very sweet piece. I actually got into a little argument with a scholar of Elizabeth Barrett Browning on Twitter at one point, because she said it was another man writing on behalf of Elizabeth about her banal life. And I just know that is not at all it on the surface, of course, I can see where someone would assume that, but and there was nothing superficial at all about Dominic and his love for Carolyn. So
Oh,
it's
that's
we
a
have a
totally
nice,
off the mark. No, that has to be, if and for any of you listening to this who hear the piece on May 15th, I mean, when you listen to that music, I mean, the depth of love and feeling that you hear in that, I mean, it's banal is, about as far away from it as you can get. I mean, this is so sincere, is
yeah,
so wonderful, so warm. I mean, it just, it is extremely heartwarming. Um, yeah, I mean, I feel so strongly about this. Of course, Clara sings it magnificently. So yeah,
it's a
you
good
listen
piece.
to it and make your own decision.
It's funny, there's something about the last 2 years and,
Yeah,
especially for us musicians where, our lives are pretty chaotic in terms of like running from place to place and going from project to project and engagement to
yeah,
engagement and constantly dealing with different colleagues and whatnot. And there was something, I mean, the pandemic was obviously horrifying and challenging, and being stuck at home, of
yeah,
course, was a first world problem because we were healthy, but like
right, right.
it also had this weird silver lining of experiencing the banal of domesticity, and it felt like,
Yeah,
I don't know, it felt like such a beautiful thing. And I know that under normal circumstances, especially now as we're getting back to things, like those moments are things that I really treasure. And
yeah. That's a good way to put it, Nick.
I would imagine that, I mean, I didn't know Dominic at all, but I would imagine that that is part of what's special about, being able to be in your place in Tuscany and,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, it's
have some downtime and like, be able to like enjoy the luxury
yeah.
of banality.
Yeah, he really, yeah, the way he found inspiration was, just like every other, I mean, now the Midwest claims him, but it would, it was, he was always, he was always a very giving collaborator, and always knew how to write what he heard. And that was really important, and didn't give a lot of allowances for some of the things. Those intervals are all going to be true and truer than true. So yeah. And the last piece, the dove, is another story of, the pandemic and what we did in the community. As a way to keep sane, there's Philip Brunel's church. He's the director of Vocal Lessons. His church is just 4 blocks from my condo, and he has now I know 10,000 different art song titles, and he has the entire collection of Guastavino and Warlock, and he has a massive library of art song that is kind of definitely not in my catalog and rare at some universities. So I would go over there, maybe twice a week for a couple of hours a day, and I cataloged on Google Drive his art song catalog, and I made sure it was in alphabetical order. And I just did it mostly because then I have access to it. I can go see what he has. But he did surprise me then when I finished with 10,000 titles, composer, poet, orchestration, publisher. Like I cataloged that. He surprised me and said, for all your work, I really appreciate it. I would love to commission Jonathan Dove to write you a cycle to premiere. And I was like, well, that's out of left field, but that sounds like fun. So that's how this last cycle came to be. It's a lemonade from the lemons of the pandemic, which is kind of fun. And Jonathan wanted to write something that is a closer when we needed one. So it's all poetry of Jenny Joseph. And everybody knows, a lot of people know the warning: when I'm an old woman, I shall wear purple. And it is raucous, and the piano parts are incredible, like Jonathan's piano parts. And it's going to be amazing. I have to howl like a wolf. So it's you do not want to miss that closer.
I can't wait to hear your howl.
Yeah, a lot of people have been waiting for a howl. So yeah, so that's what that is. But it's and it's about fairy tales. The three are about like kind of looking through the looking glass of fairy tales and how we kind of twist things around. So they're fun. They're 3 fun songs.
He also
Really.
made us, in addition to sending the score, he made us a little recording of him playing and singing, which I really hope to eventually convince him to release, because it's stunning. It's absolutely the way I mean, there's a lot of this kind of like stride, going on in the piano parts, and there's jazzy stuff, and it's kind of raucous, and but the way he sings and all the words, it's wonderful. The piano wise, it reminds me of like Art Tatum going at it on one of these crappy pianos in a backroom bar or something, but
Yeah, it's great. It's great to have that resource. Like when I'm learning, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's really just throw that up there and forget the line. Okay.
It's always nice when you can like call the composer and be like, what did you mean here? And what
Yes.
exactly do you want?
Yes, yeah, there's nothing else like it. There's nothing else like it. And to have that, yeah, primary source material in my Dropbox, I just, oh yeah, okay, that's how he wants that pronounced.
It's kind of amazing when the composer can like play and sing everything, and you're like, well, why am I here? Like,
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's really incredible. I would pay to see that every day of the week. It's true.
so aside from this particular recital on May 15th, what else do you guys have coming up down the pipeline?
This is actually this is one of the premieres is the Dove, and then I have two more premieres within a span of like 3 weeks, which I'm excited about. I'm singing Steve Heitzig wrote a piece called Lament of the Earth for National Lutheran Choir, and that is for choir and orchestra and youth, and that's going to be beautiful. It's all about what we've done to the earth and how we lament for it. Steve writes such beautiful music and has such an authentic message with that. So that's, I think, sometime in May. Yep. And then following this recital, I'm doing a new orchestrated song cycle of Carol Barnett's, and it's all Will Shakespeare's ladies. So it's Ophelia, it's Portia, it's Juliet, it's Cleopatra, and Lady Macbeth. And it's orchestrated. The Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra is playing it here in Minnesota, directed by Bill Schrickle, and it's they always do free admission for their concerts. So if anybody wants to make the trip to Minneapolis on May 22nd, that day I knew, that'll be a world premiere song cycle as well with orchestra, and it's great. It ends with Cleopatra, so you can imagine how that ends. It's not happy. But that's kind of, yeah, but it's dramatic. Then that's kind of that's the end of the season. It's a nice end with a lot of new song, which makes me very happy.
Tyler?
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to recording some of this stuff, Clara.
Yep.
That'll be really fun. And on my radar, we always have a chamber music festival every fall here, changed it to fall. Clara's come, she sang a Libby Larson premiere here a few years ago during the pandemic. We were out there in the courtyard right outside my window, outdoor concert, which was the only way to have a concert at that time. And we got Libby here on a big TV that we rolled into the courtyard. That was really fun. So got that coming up again. And also on my radar, I really want to go. Henry Cowell wrote a lot of songs, most of which are unknown, most of which are unpublished. It's on my radar. One of these years where I can get in, and maybe now that the pandemic's over, to go to they're all housed in the Performing Arts Library in Lincoln Center, to go there and just grab them all, because there's so it's kind of like Ives. There's a lot of hidden gems in there, and very few of them are known. So that's kind of my radar. I think Clara would do a great job seeing a lot of these too. So.
Yeah.
And you have your own song festival, right, Clara?
Yeah. August 8th through 12th is our 9th annual Source Song Festival. Yep, it's already 9 years. And this year, our theme, we just sent out application notice, or applications came in, and we just sent out our acceptances. We invite 8 composers to study with Libby Larson and David Evan Thomas. And then we have 8 duos, so 16 musicians of singers and pianists, and they collaborate with each other throughout the week. And our theme this year is the artist's undersong. Our purpose, Emerson wrote this amazing poem about our undersong and how we move forward as artists. And after 2 years of this interrupted education for a lot of our students, even professors that attend the festival, it's important that we get back to the reason why and our purpose, and so we can unite and say to the world that, yeah, we are actually essential, and it's time to hone what that purpose is through new song and through some traditional leader and melody. So Warren will be coming for that, and favorite of CAIC, David Portillo, will be singing a recital. I can't wait. It's always, our audiences are primed the first week of August because it's the nicest week in Minnesota during the year. So it just, without fail, we know that there's never going to be snow that week. So we welcome everyone to come in. And yeah, we have faculty from around the nation coming in, and our students are ranging all the way from USC to Eastman. So it's going to be really an amazing year. So August 8th through 12th, we have concerts every night or a master class every night. So
Amazing. So I have to ask, I mean, your knowledge of poetry is pretty impressive. How did you become obsessed with poetry?
I think the biggest thing about poetry is like it was like the Netflix before Netflix. It was a quick, easy way to detach from whatever I had to detach from. I know this about myself, that I like to keep myself busy. So when I have those moments of repose, the best thing I could do was reach for a book of poetry. And it wasn't something that I studied at all in North Dakota or Iowa, but it really gives you a sense to stop. Just to give you that sense of, okay, you have done all your tasks for today, you've done your laundry, you've done everything possible, but like give yourself a moment to actually remind yourself your purpose on the planet. So I really love poetry, and I am not creative at all when it comes to sound. So that's why I think I have such a devotion to art song, because composers of art song are incredibly astute, and they put so much into the melodies and the accompaniment. So I think while I'm very in tune with poetry and I can do that on my own, I owe a lot to the composers of that find those poems that I maybe have not found yet, although I continue to look.
It's interesting. That's very similar to Britton's process. I mean, he would,
Oh, really?
yeah, he would just kind of, when he had breaks or he would, was going around, he would like read poems, and then he would clock them and say, oh, this is a good one. And then he'd file it
Yeah.
away. And then eventually they would end up in one of the song cycles. But
Yeah.
it was his process too, was just sort of like continuously exploring poetry and then shelving
Yeah.
it away.
I think the best thing that really keeps me sane is that a Poetry Foundation anthology that comes every month. There's so many poets that I've never heard of. There's so many styles of poetry that are still evolving, and it just, yeah, it's a way to travel, even time travel, without any sort of big commitment, 5 minutes at a time.
Have you been? You'll have to visit them.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
They have a wonderful library. The building, I think, is reopened finally, so they have a wonderful library there. We also we normally do performances. There one performance there a year, but the library is a really beautiful, cool place.
Okay, great.
So now that I've plugged for them, so we always end these little chats with 2 questions, and I'll hope that you'll both answer them both. The 2 questions are: what do you see as the future of the vocal recital? And also, why do you think song is important?
Wow. Yeah.
Tyler, how about you go first?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, my perspective on that has shifted a little bit. Now I live in Fargo. I don't know how many of you all watching have been in Fargo much. It's very different than your Chicago's or your New York's. Those places you have fabulous things like CAIC happening. Here, there's really not the equivalent. So it's almost like, we need to catch up in a way, or, whenever we have a faculty or a guest recital here or a student recital here, the community members are always, like, tell me about these things. I want to come and see it. So the things that are happening, I know, for instance, I read that CAIC started with a house concert. Obviously, for me, that's one of the most meaningful things is, people actually, of course, that's historical too, Shabirtiads, et cetera, people coming, together in a more closed settings, the Parisian salons, those kind of things. For me, that's very valuable. That's, I mean, more broadly, what's the future of the art song recital? I mean, more and more different venues, more and more different, communities, that, we could all own art song, that it not be something for Europeans or rich white people, that it really is something by everyone for everyone. And so different venues, going out different places can help for that to become clear. Clara, I don't know if you have thoughts.
No, it's very similar. I think the importance of song is knowing that everybody has a different story. Everybody has that different through line of what happened in life or what's about to happen or where they're from. And I think the importance of song is that it doesn't assume anything of either the storyteller or the audience at this point. And I think good songs and good song recitals don't assume anything in the audience, and it gives a sense of ability to just be whatever you want to be at that moment. There's interaction at your own pace. There's a, if you know the language, great. But if you don't know the language, there's still beauty to be heard. So it's just, I think the importance of it is that it's that art form that you don't have to assume anything about the music that's being made or the people in the audience or the artists. Like, it's just that assumption is out the window. And I think the future of it builds on that by finding, for instance, when we talked about the undersong theme of Source Song Festival, finding those places where those assumptions can really be let go. So not necessarily, even that means, like Tyler said, different venues, different communities, really finding a place where parking isn't even an issue, like these things that we think about, and providing major access to the ability to not have any assumptions, I think it's a big task and it's really difficult. But with art song being so mobile, with it being so with song in general being so far reaching, I think we can do a lot through the vehicle of voice and piano, or voice and another instrument, or just voice alone. But through specifically voice and piano, we can do a lot. Hopefully the encore that we do will stretch that assumptions of what art song is too.
There's
So
a
I will
teaser.
leave that as a little teaser.
So be sure to clap.
Yeah, that means if there's an encore. So if you want it, but it does it stretches things in that way. Yeah.
Well, you guys, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to chat with us and to take us through this journey of your program and tell us about yourselves and share your stories with us. We really appreciate it. Everybody who's watching, this was pre-recorded. So, sorry we didn't have a chance for your questions today, but hopefully you can buy tickets to come to the show on May 15th and ask questions of Clara and Tyler yourself. So again, the show is May 15th at 3 p.m. at Epiphany Center for the Arts. Get your tickets. It's a great venue. They'll have an open bar, and also, they'll have a bar and they'll have, I believe, food as well after a certain point. So, come early, get a drink, get yourself settled, enjoy the program, stay after, get another drink, chat with the artists and us, and come. And if you're not able to attend on May 15th, this will also be broadcast on Friday, May 27th at 7 p.m. and it will remain on demand until Thursday, June 2nd. But either way, come on the 15th. We hope to see you there. It's our final event of the season, and we'd love to sort of celebrate the beginning of summer with you a little early.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
Hey.
So thanks, guys, and bye Facebook and YouTube. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.